Hello, Derbyites. The Emmy nominations came out yesterday. You've heard us yak and yak about all the acting categories and all the genres, but now we are going to talk about some of the other categories: variety, reality, animation, and all sorts of other categories that my wonderful panel here wants to talk about. So with us, we have former Estonian basketball sensation Zach Laws, President of Professional Street Performers Union Local 279, Riley Chow, preeminent bocce ball historian Amanda Spears, and the #1 writer of Empty Nest fan fiction, Tom O'Brien.
I've actually played bocce ball.
It's great. I played for the first time this past weekend. It's great.
It's really good to play while drinking. Yeah,
it is. All right. So, Amanda, I will come to you first. What did you think about the variety and reality categories at yesterday's nominations?
I mean, they might as well just give it to John Oliver and save everyone 20 minutes on stage. Like, we all know how this is going down. It has more nominations than any other show. Good for you. 3 years in a row. I hope Stephen Colbert, John Colbert comes back and does his little stint on Oliver again. That was funny this season.
Why does John Oliver keep getting nominated for sound mixing and production design?
Because they love him that much. That's why. It really
you got me on that one.
It's not just the writing. That's how we know it's going to win. It's not just that it got a writing and directing nomination. It's that those tech category people love that show enough to nominate it where maybe it doesn't really belong. So,
well, see, I had the same reaction about SNL. And I know it deserves those below the line tech nominations, but it's just getting in everywhere, and it makes the writing, well, not necessarily writing, but at least the variety series, variety sketch series category kind of anticlimactic. Mm-hmm. And the directing award as well, because Don Roy King's going to win that one again.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. I'm just saying it's anticlimactic.
Well, I think we saw I feel bad for Jimmy Kimmel because he's not going to win for a series, and he had another good hosting at the Oscars, and especially with the Tony Awards not in contention this year, it really should have been his turn. But then they have to compete against Jesus Christ Superstar, which I believe should be in TV movie, and then we'd have a real race on our hands. But I know I am not the one who gets to pick what categories they go into.
Yeah. Can I give a shout out to Samantha Bee and the Emmy voters who gave her, a vote of confidence? Because this has always been a good show that has been bubbling, in contention every year. But this year they said, okay, you're on the hot seat. We're going to give you a vote of confidence. And
we got your back.
And as a woman, which is not a statement I like making very often, because as Julia pointed out, women who say that hate women who say that. So anyways, I usually hate it when women call each other the C word because it makes it okay for men to do it, which is what Tina Fey taught us in Mean Girls. But I'll give her a free pass on this one. I honestly think she deserves a free pass because what's happened is so despicable. She used it to shock us into a conversation about complacency. And I think if anyone is going to beat John Oliver, it's Samantha Bee. It is. And wouldn't that be lovely to finally see her smash the glass ceiling Tracy Ullman cracked 26, 27 years ago? That's how long that category has gone without a woman winning.
Well, there's another person who made history in this category, actually, and it's a really big deal, too. The Daily Show came back for the first time in 3 years.
Good for him.
Making Trevor Noah the first
Bravo.
non-white late-night host to have a show that contends, just like Samantha Bee's the first woman. And,
she's not really the first woman if you consider them when they were merged together with Sketch. Tracy Ullman won, but I'll stop. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You've always got to point out those little technicalities to me, which is what makes us so great as a team.
The Bickerson.
No, what I was going to say is that this is a guy who has lived in Jon Stewart's shadow ever since he took over that show, and I think that he's finally come into his own and made the show his own. And so kudos to him for finally getting some recognition. And I think this is the first year he's really deserved it, because I think that he was kind of competing against his predecessor there. Which then brings up the fact that John Oliver does seem inevitable here, because he has kind of been the one that's taken Jon Stewart's place, if you will. But I agree with you, Amanda. I think that if anybody's going to win, it's going to beat him. It would be Samantha Bee.
And I think race is usually is a point of content, but he's still a dude. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
She's definitely coming from a different voice, and I'm not trying to play the feminist card.
No. I mean, I think but I think that if Samantha Bee wins, it's for another. I think it's both for that. I mean, this is like people always say this is the year of the woman, but I mean, we really have been seeing, like, in the age of Me Too, she is the champion of Me Too on her show. She is the most vocal, champion of that, which makes the whole, like, people getting angry at her about Ivanka Trump very ironic.
I think there's a difference in saying it to be mean and saying it as a way of shaking the status quo, because everybody was going after Trump and Ivanka Trump for this. And I think she did it in a way that was purposefully done to get some attention on this subject.
And look, I think, I agree. Jon Stewart said something about how it's all just kind of fake outrage on the right. You know what I mean? Like the fact that people feigned this kind of outrage over her saying this word, when this is a woman, Ivanka Trump is somebody who has defended her father's inexcusable actions with women and, you name it, right? Like, I think that it's just, there's no moral equivalency between somebody being called what is, a nasty name, don't get me wrong, and somebody who's actually doing terrible things to other people. But just getting back on track, though, Samantha Bee has been building up a lot of goodwill with her show over the past 3 seasons now. She's gotten more nominations with each passing year.
She won last year in the special category.
And I think
for the correspondence dinner.
She might still win for her other special this year. That probably will be the easier pickup for her.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
against the HBO juggernaut, and then the Big Four. It's just even Comedy Central. Like that's a really tough win for TBS.
Yeah.
This may not be connected, but I'll throw it out anyway. The first year that a talk series host of color wins, it's the first year that Bill Maher, who used the N-word on his show, did not get nominated.
Good for that. I mean, like he used it. It was just inappropriate. I mean, he should have known better. He really should know better.
It was just bizarre, because it was in an interview with a U.S. senator, for God's sake.
Yeah.
It was just bizarre. I do want to bring up something here. So as now once we get into, other categories, we got to separate variety series and variety special. I'm looking at the nominees for variety series. Now, I know a lot of us are thinking that Last Week Tonight with John Oliver is the front runner. How much of a possibility is an upset by Saturday Night Live here?
For series?
For writing.
Oh, for writing. Oh, okay. I was confused. You confused me there.
Yeah, John, I think that if SNL was going to win writing, they would have done it last year. I mean, they haven't won writing since Tina Fey was the head writer. I know, because I wrote an article about this last year. So I don't think this is gonna be the year for them. I think they'll still win directing. They're very lucky that they did them a favor and put Jesus Christ Superstar in movie limited series. So.
Yeah, I think John Oliver is what I would.
But this is going to be a cluster of a problem for like variety series, for variety categories, because it's going to be like SNL and Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah.
I'll say, speaking of writing, though, like we talked before when we were doing predictions for the nominations, and we thought that Seth Meyers might break in, but he's again just relegated to the writing category. while The Daily Show is able to sneak in, has 3 nominations now, but still is not in writing. So I guess we should not look to you guys, Tom, if we're trying to figure out what's going on.
But the writers' branch goes their own way, and Seth Meyers, he's a really good writer. I mean, he helped Amy Poehler and Tina Fey when they hosted the Globes.
It's kind of surprising that he hasn't gotten nominated for Variety Talk Series yet, considering that each passing year he's become more and more popular, you know, and his closer look segments are more widely viewed. You know, it is kind of surprising that he hasn't been able to crack through here yet. I actually thought that, you know, this might have been the year that James Corden falls out, because he doesn't do that kind of political material very often.
But I think that helps him, actually. Yeah. He doesn't do that. I mean, that's that's one of the things that, like, you know, you watch enough news, you read some news, you get bogged down with it. It's nice to see him sing in the car with Paul McCartney.
I know. I'm just saying that I thought that maybe the politics would help somebody like Seth Meyers bump somebody like James Corden, because, you know, we haven't seen Jimmy Fallon compete here for the last couple of years, and I think it's probably because he, in terms of going after Donald Trump, is the weakest. I mean, James Corden is more you know, vicious in his anti-Trump coverage than Jimmy Fallon is.
I don't think there's anything wrong with just wanting to do a comedy to do. Like
I don't either. No, I like the show. I just, you know, I'm just saying that in the climate that we have today, it's surprising that Seth Meyers has not.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm just saying, personally, it is nice to, like, not have to think about it for.
I personally think he should be.
And I think that Corden is helped by the primetime karaoke specials.
Mm-hmm. Also, because, like, I mean,
drop the mic on TBS. Like, seriously,
I've never seen a man. I've never seen a man so thirsty for Emmys in my life. I mean, he got nominated. Riley, what was that? He got nominated in the short form actor category.
It's James Corden playing James Corden in James Corden's next James Corden.
As if the man did not need more Emmy categories to compete in. You know what I mean?
God love him. I don't know.
You know, so we also have the writing for a variety special category, and this one's interesting because we have the Full Frontal with Samantha Bee special about Puerto Rico, which has a whole list of writers. And then we have 3 stand-up specials, 2 from Netflix, Patton Oswalt, who won 2 years ago, and John Mulaney for Kid Gorgeous at Radio City. And then HBO has the Michelle Wolf special. And then we also have 2 television darlings in Steve Martin and Martin Short for An Evening You Will Forget for the Rest of Your Life, which I just love that title, first of all. Do we see any sort of one that has sort of a leg up on that?
I would go with Samantha Bee, because I think they're going to want to award her somewhere.
See, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and frankly, having to vote for writing, stand up after stand up after stand up gets tiring. And the Puerto Rico special meant something. And I think that extra little bit of social consciousness is going to put it over the top.
And I didn't know it was possible to feel sorry for Sarah Huckabee Sanders until Michelle Wolf went to town.
Now, I was going to say that maybe that helps give her a leg up, because, I mean, I think it's just...
Yeah.
I think there's a point where it's like, you know, she went a little, I guess, was a little too awkward.
I mean, I couldn't care less about Sarah Huckabee.
I know, but you know what? Every woman, like, having people make comments about your appearance at all, like.
But no, wait a minute.
Going in a room full of.
He wasn't.
Okay, well, we're getting way too much. We're getting way too much into the political stuff. I never thought I would say this, but we are getting way too much into the political stuff. So I think
there are people who are sensitive to. You know, I don't think even people who hate her, and I don't like her myself, could still go, you know, that's a little
I'm just going to say you're all wrong, and John Mulaney's going to win this one, okay? So now that we have that one settled, let's move over to reality. I'm so good at this. Let's talk about reality. You know, we had an interesting year last year where RuPaul's Drag Race was winning all these awards. Did it win like 4 or 5 at the Creative Arts? And then the main award at the main, including host, it won for the second year in a row. And then for the main award, it loses to The Voice again. Do we think that a repeat of that is going to happen this year?
I hope not, because I'm sick and tired of The Voice winning. I mean, the only one of these shows I even really keep up with regularly is RuPaul, just because it's entertaining and, for reasons other than the competition. I mean, it won all of those Creative Arts Emmys because it's such a well-made show, and I think it's kind of, to be perfectly honest, there seems to be a bit of, dare I say, homophobia in its losing, because, like, it's about drag queens, and I don't know. I feel like that's sort of one of those things where there's still a lot of bias there.
Sorry, Zach, I tried, but it didn't.
I don't know. Maybe W. Kamau Bell could pull it off. I mean, the shows.
I don't think so.
Wait, are we talking about?
Oh, the host category you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll say in the main category, I'm going with The Voice again for two reasons. One is that The Voice actually broke into a couple categories this year, which I didn't think was possible this late in its run. But yes, it's now nominated for directing, and it's also now nominated for editing, which it was not last year. And then the other part of why I'm going with The Voice is because at the Producers Guild Awards, they have fewer slots, and RuPaul can't get in there. And that is the only other industry award that we have where they're actually just voting for best reality competition show. And even though the Emmys use more of like a passion vote system, I feel like RuPaul is not quite hitting as broadly as it needs to if it can't get a Producers Guild nomination. And The Voice is still growing.
And I think The Voice is more seen. Like, I mean, I can't remember what network RuPaul's Drag Race is on, but
VH1.
It's on VH1.
Yeah, that's a big award to give VH1. I mean, so's hosts, but it's not. I think everyone's seen an episode or two of The Voice where there are probably some people who haven't seen Drag Race.
Well, if I can make a case for Drag Race, it has increased its ratings every year. In season 10, to increase your ratings is almost phenomenal. And I think and they've also increased their Emmy total. This year, they're up to 10. I mean, that's very impressive in some categories that you wouldn't necessarily think that this kind of show would do that. I think Top Chef is done. I think Runway is done. I think Amazing Race is done.
I wouldn't count out The Amazing Race, but that's just,
No,
I wouldn't put it in sixth place. That's what I'm saying. Like, don't be completely crazy.
Well, I think there's about 2 shows. Well, you know what? Maybe 3. Maybe American Ninja Warrior could win over.
I don't get the popularity of that show. I mean, seriously.
I get it.
Amazing Race.
Amanda, I remember when I was like 8 to 10, I was obsessed with a show called American Gladiators. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what this is.
It's like people in gym class.
And in retrospect, I can't believe it took me that long to figure out I was gay.
Let's move on. Let's just go.
No, we're going to talk about this for 20 more minutes.
No.
Okay. So let me continue
to make the okay.
Oh, no, you were still making your point?
Let me continue to make the case.
Yes.
I think it's between The Voice and Drag Race. What Drag Race, The Voice is really a top-of-the-line vocal show. Drag Race has to include talent in terms of sewing capability, comedy, singing. I mean, this is a multi-talented kind of group, and they had a particularly good year this year. They had one contestant who got eliminated early. Named Miss Vanjie, who wound up becoming a meme, and even the Democratic candidate for governor in California, Gavin Newsom, did a little Miss Vanjie thing on his. So this has really kind of gotten into the.
Not only was that early in the year, that was the season premiere, I believe. I believe she was the first one eliminated, and she just walks back and just said Miss Vanjie 3 times as she's walking back, and turned into this cultural phenomenon.
Speaking of,
I mean, I am in a gay kickball league. That was anything. That was the only thing people were talking about for weeks.
Yeah. But your point is right in terms of the fact that it's won all of these other Emmy awards and didn't go all the way with the big one. I think this year might be the one that they really take it away.
God, I hope so, because I'm, the other nominees in this category, like Project Runway and Amazing Race and Top Chef, it just feels like they're just name checking. Like, why are they still here?
They're tired.
At The Voice, why is it still winning? I just, I guess I'm not.
This is a category where when they like something, they just stick to it.
Yeah.
The Amazing Race, did it win like 10 years in a row?
Yeah. And admittedly, I'm not.
And then Top Chef won, and then it went back to winning.
Yeah. And admittedly, I'm not the viewer for reality television, but I love RuPaul's Drag Race. I enjoy.
No, go ahead. Top Chef. I've never seen a network have a promo ready so quickly for winning an Emmy than Bravo with that win. Usually it takes 2 or 3 days. They had it up the next day. Sorry.
And and when I see, I can't begrudge The Voice whenever Adam Levine winds up in Blake Shelton's lap. But nonetheless,
see, the weird thing is, I thought that would have been reversed, but that's beside the point.
That's beside.
Speaking of reality, why is Donald Trump still a member of the Television Academy? Why haven't they kicked him out?
Can someone intercept his ballot? Because I would love to do that.
He's still filling it out. Come on.
Of course.
I want to just briefly also, since we're in reality, talk about host for a reality or reality competition program. Do we think that RuPaul will three-peat here, or could Jane Lynch come back and win? Possibly W. Kamau Bell. The show United States of America won an Emmy last year. What do you guys think?
I would love to see W. Kamau Bell, because I think he does something different than everyone else in the category. But I watch too much CNN, and I know that. But I think, they like to repeat. And I think, I would go with RuPaul one more time. I think 3 is probably a good number where they'll stop and maybe find someone else.
Yeah, and I think that if, RuPaul, ends up being a front runner to win in the top category, then it would make sense to reward RuPaul Charles. Just looking at this category, Jane Lynch, yes, she's won again, and she's back. She's won twice for this show before. Mm-hmm. Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn.
One and done.
Yeah. And then I think you're right about W. Kamau Bell. Although, Ellen DeGeneres is
Ellen.
But okay, I think he does something different from all the rest of them. He's the apple in the bag of oranges.
And he was not nominated last year, right?
Was he not?
I don't think he was.
No,
he was for the host category.
No, he was.
For hosting.
Yeah, in the host. Yeah.
For hosting? Oh,
yes, he was. Yeah.
What are we talking about?
W. Kamau Bell.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I would argue, I'm kind of a stickler on this category. I do like to have hosts that involve themselves in the process of the show, the way Jeff Probst did when he won those 4 years for Survivor. He contributes to the drama. DeGeneres is a host. Lynch is a host.
Lynch involves herself a little bit. She's
but she doesn't affect what happens.
Right.
Whereas Klum and Gunn do. They go into the workroom.
Gunn more than Klum, but yeah.
Yeah. Gunn and RuPaul does significantly, and I think that has something to do with the fact that RuPaul has won the last 2 years, and he did the same thing this year. So I'm going to go with him.
And he's really just such a presence on that show too. You said, but also, just his whole personality, or her whole personality when he's doing the RuPaul and drag. It is such I mean, it's such a performance. You know, it's so much a part of why you watch that show.
And the show is beautifully cast.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They have really very interesting people coming on there. So you're really gripped week after week.
Yeah.
See,
Tom O'Brien and I got to meet some of them at our last goal. And Riley, you were there too, right?
Yeah.
Did you make the Queens?
Yes.
I saw them. See, if I thought that if anyone was going to beat RuPaul this year, or any number of people, it would have been the Fab Five from Queer Eye. I don't know if the issue was just that there were too many of them on the ballot, and the Emmy voters said, enough is enough. 5 people can't occupy 1 nomination slot. But that's a show that got 4 other nominations, and I feel like it has the cool factor. It's much more of a zeitgeist hit than whatever show Ellen or Alec Baldwin or
I think the problem with Queer Eye is, and the multiple 5, and the difference between having 5 and 2 is, if you don't like all 5 of them, it's really easy to exclude. If you only like 1 or 2 of them, but you don't really like the other 3, I could see how they were like, nah, because that's probably why shows like The View and The Talk don't really win on the daytime Emmy side.
So, are there any other categories that y'all want to talk about here? I mean, we were reminded yesterday that there are 122 categories at the Emmys. The Grammys are trying to get them down. The Emmys just go, keep them coming. Amanda, I think you wanted to talk about some of the costume categories.
Yeah, I love the costume categories. One of the interesting changes to best costumes, is they went from including period and sci-fi fantasy together to splitting it up. So what that means is, if you want to see how Game of Thrones and The Handmaid's Tale are going to do head to head, that's a category. Those are the categories to look at. How do they compete going against one another? Because they're going to need below the line support. The Handmaid's Tale just can't win 3 acting races and win drama. You can't just have the acting branch support. So, for example, for fantasy sci-fi, it's basically the 3 that have a decent chance are Game of Thrones, The Handmaid's Tale, and Westworld, where The Handmaid's Tale kind of screwed up with their submission. They submitted Seeds, which is the wedding episode, when they really probably should have gone with the funeral aftermath episode, I think it's called, from the bombing, where the handmaids go to that very large funeral and they're in black and the masks and the gloves as kind of a different look at it. But Game of Thrones submitted Beyond the Wall, which was a smart one, because you do get that beautiful white outfit that Daenerys wears in her saving moment away from the black. And Game of Thrones has won this category, I think, 3+ times. So that's going to be a fun race, because Handmaid's Tale did not win last year, even with people dressed up as handmaids. They lost to The Crown.
Right, and I mean, to your point too, I think it was significant last year. It did win for production design last year. Mm-hmm. Which was a major victory, considering that, even though it competes in the sci-fi fantasy category, although I don't know how much, it's more like a documentary these days, but the fact that it basically is like a contemporary show when you think about it. So for it to pull off a victory like that, I think is significant. This is also a place where it's not in this same category, but, in the period costumes, you've got Mrs. Maisel having to compete against The Crown. And that was my next one that I wanted, not to chew up this, but no, you go for it. You go for it.
The Crown really made an error. They made a little bit of an oops, because no production, and there's been tons of movies and miniseries with JFK and Jackie Kennedy and a major motion picture where none of them have won for her clothing. So maybe the fact that it focuses more on Queen Elizabeth will help. I personally would have told them to go with the Princess Margaret wedding episode, because they did make another replica of a wedding gown. and that worked for him last time, and everybody's had royal wedding fever. This is Outlander's only nomination, and not to like give them false hope, but no, I'm not giving them false hope. I do think if they've seen this episode, in her 60s clothes, Katrina Balfe decides she's going to go back to the 18th century. But before she does, she rolls up her sleeves and she starts making this costume. So the costume is not just clothes or wardrobe. It is a plot point. And there might be some costume designers who, like that idea, but it's their only nomination.
I do want to say, I mean, just, you say it was an error to submit the Jackie Kennedy episode. I'm sure that the people who submitted it were not aware of the factoid that you're aware of, that, no production is won for recreating Jackie Kennedy's clothing. And they probably just assumed that since it's such an iconic look, that would be the way to go, right? Like,
yeah, and I mean, they get
actually with this one,
her pink stained dress, like they get through, we see her.
But what I was thinking is that it's possible that because most of those other pieces that have been nominated for their costumes for Jackie Kennedy, it's really just Jackie Kennedy that has the costumes.
But there's been enough of them where they focused on like.
Yeah, but there hasn't been anything. There hasn't been anything else. Whereas this actually, is more than just Jackie Kennedy. it's all the royal family. So that could actually just give it that.
But not this episode. Not this episode. This episode is almost entirely the Queen intercut with Jackie Kennedy. And yes, the Queen gets to, Claire Foy gets to wear the big crown and the jewels and everything. But I think with the royal wedding, I think they should have just piggybacked off that and submitted the Princess Margaret wedding episode.
You just don't want the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel to lose an Emmy.
No,
I'm
not saying that. I mean, I don't really think, they submit. I would have told them to submit the pilot. I personally,
well, I mean, the point that we should.
Interesting race. I mean, if the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel takes down Genius, The Alienist, and The Crown and Outlander, then it's going to look really good. That's a really strong category.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the point I was, just going to point out that, if like with The Handmaid's Tale winning in production design last year, I think this is a good place to look out for a sign of strength on the part of Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah. And then because contemporary costumes was redefined as anything that takes place less than 25 years ago, the assassination of Gianni Versace will now probably win contemporary costumes.
I love the idea of a showdown between Blackish and the assassination of Gianni Versace. But, it is curious that Blackish got into contemporary costumes when the costumes were from people who are wearing them now of older costumes. But nonetheless, I think Versace is about costumes, so I can't imagine it not winning.
It's kind of the same thing as like, it's.
I think it's
about clothes.
Well, yeah, it's about people like killing people who wear clothes, but but it's also, it's also what this has. I think if somehow Versace loses this one, I think that's telling.
Oh,
if it does,
very, yeah.
Yeah, looking at this category, it's really hard.
There's no other competition because, like, This Is Us, The Wedding, whatever. Grace and Frankie, come on. Empire, maybe it's first season. Blackish, no. This really should be like their Emmy. And if they can't win this, maybe they should have gone with the episode where there was a runway show. That's my one thought, was maybe they should have gone with like Creator Destroyer, where there was the fashion show. Because there was more clothes in it, but
maybe it was kind of empty.
But still, it's about the clothes, and
I wish I still thought episodes mattered at all.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, like, I love, I love all this talk about, well, which episode should they have submitted? But I wonder if that even matters now. If they're just like voting for the show that they like, or in the case of something like The Crown.
You're still wondering, Zach?
I'm still wondering. But I mean, take like The Crown, for instance. I mean, that is on its face like the most obvious costume winner within that particular category because it is about royalty, right? I mean,
It screams then. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Just
And
like,
it could be the one to break the streak, but it's just, when there's been like 15, 20 movies, you kind of go, that's not a coincidence. It's almost like a curse at this point where,
Mhm.
it's just one of those things. So I'll thank you for obliging me and let me talk about costumes.
So actually, I actually want to go to Riley next, because I know, Riley, you take a look at a lot of the below the line categories. Were there any that you that particularly interested you?
Well, I do like that this year they're crediting the interactive nominations to the actual series. I hate having stuff like where Stranger Things gets 18 nominations and then the Stranger Things VR experience gets 1 nomination. Some other categories that I want to talk about are narrator. It's fun to see Liev Schreiber always pop up there, but I bring it up because they actually nominated Morgan Freeman this year, which I thought was a curious choice.
He's got such a good voice, though. It's like you can see.
I guess he hasn't been charged with anything, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with who's been
Well, I'll tell you who hasn't been charged with anything. Carl Reiner hasn't, and that's kind of where I'm thinking, he's just an Emmy veteran. I think one of the things he does regularly is he actually, when he goes on talk shows, is he shows the photo of his awards mantle, which has like 9 Emmys on it, considering, the man is a showbiz god.
Yes.
Is he like the oldest nominee ever? Because he's 96 years old. Is he like?
That's very possible.
Yeah.
So I would think that he would probably have a good chance. Although I love how David Attenborough is listed as Sir David Attenborough.
Right.
So I think that could give him.
I do have a question. Do you guys think that Ramin Djawadi is finally going to win original music for Game of Thrones?
Let me look at that category real quick.
It's Marvel's Jessica Jones, Once Upon a Time, SEAL Team, Pattern of Life. I don't know what that is.
That's
Star Wars, Rebels, and Westworld for Akane no Mai. That could be
Rebels. What?
What I don't know about these categories is when everybody else changed over their voting systems. I'm not sure if the music branch changed over their voting systems for the winners. For the nominations, they're still doing that, where it's very equitable and everybody ranks or everybody rates every nominee. But I feel like in the last few years, we've seen a lot more popular series win the music awards. It'd be good if we could find that out.
And he did just get his first Grammy nomination. I mean, he lost to La La Land, but it's very rare for TV series to get a Grammy nomination for their original score, considering he was in there with Dunkirk.
Well, there is a multiple Emmy winner in this category as well, Sean Callery for Jessica Jones. He's got multiple Emmys on his shelf, and
including one for the Jessica Jones music.
That's true. Yeah, that's right.
But I do like the Akane no Mai because the music was very. That's also Ramin Djawadi, so he could win. Never mind.
I would want. Which would you think he would win for? Game of Thrones or Westworld?
I think he's done such great work on Game of Thrones. I would hope it would be Game of Thrones. I mean, they're playing the theme song outside Buckingham Palace. He did a concert at the Hollywood Bowl. He got a Grammy nomination. I think this is possibly one of those categories where they probably should have won it already by now.
Well, as long as it's not Star Wars Rebels, I'll be happy because I'm sick of Star Wars right now.
Here.
It's over, right? So.
Were we going to talk about animation at all?
Well, I was saving that because that is my personal wheelhouse. So I was letting everyone else talk about things, but I will bring up But since you brought it up, I'd love to talk about animation because.
Here we go.
Because I think one of the best shows on television right now finally got in. Unfortunately, it was not BoJack Horseman, but Rick and Morty. One of my favorite shows since I accidentally just discovered it while keeping my TV on Adult Swim one night while I was drunk, which isn't that how all great romances start? I think that's how one of my senators met his wife.
That's how I fell in love with Meta Soprano from The Sopranos.
If only she could parallel park. Rick and Morty is finally nominated for animated program. They've submitted the episode Pickle Rick, which has become a very iconic thing on itself, where Rick turns himself into a pickle in order to avoid going to family therapy. It has a guest spot by Susan Sarandon. It's a very good episode. It's also, but it's one that is just utterly insane, just like all of them. But the scenes where he's a pickle and he starts fighting insects and killing rats to gain their strength and manipulate their bodies. It's just absolutely crazy. But then it also has this very wonderful depth to it. With the family therapy scene, and you have the therapist played wonderfully by Susan Sarandon. I would love to see it win. It's up against some of the usual suspects. The Simpsons, a 10-time winner, I believe. Bob's Burgers won twice. South Park has won 5 times. And then there's one other that I'm not sure about. Let me just bring up which one that is.
Is that your dog?
Yeah, hold on a second.
Poor thing.
Baymax Returns.
Yes.
Big Hero 6, the series, which I haven't watched. So I love that Rick and Morty got in. I think it could win. It would be tough, but if anyone has anything to say about any of those nominees, please weigh in.
I want you to be happy. So
haven't a clue.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy for Rick, and I'm a fan of Rick and Morty too. And by the way, anybody who's wondering, my roommates just came home and are taking my dog for a walk. That's why she's screaming, not because of any kind of animal abuse on my part.
So you say.
That's right.
I see that they did not submit the Boss Baby series, so we won't have that one, or we're not having that one disrupt the Emmys like we had it disrupt the Oscars.
At the Oscars,
There's a
yes.
series.
Thank you.
Let's talk EGOT for a minute, because we know, oh, sorry, go for it.
I just wanted to also bring up, while I'm very ecstatic about the animated program, the character voiceover, I'm not as crazy about. Although I think we might finally see Seth MacFarlane lose this, because he is nominated against himself. He's up for American Dad and for Family Guy. I'd like to see Alex Borstein win, because I adore her, and I think she's
that
great.
might mean she was going to win supporting actress.
Well, who knows? She could win too. I don't know anything about the scariest story ever, a Mickey Mouse Halloween spooktacular. And then you have Dan Castellaneta from The Simpsons, and he's always wonderful. But I was very disappointed no one from Bob's Burgers got in.
Yeah, what the hell? Where's John Benjamin?
John Benjamin, they had great. I was hoping to see John Roberts get nominated, because he submitted the musical episode, The Bleakening.
Yeah,
as his submission.
Kristen Shaw's always great.
And he's been nominated before, and he owns that episode. He is fantastic in it.
Yeah.
And so I'm very very surprised and a little bit offended.
They don't really like Bob's Burgers, do they?
They've nominated other
win
people
last year for animated program.
Won twice.
Okay, I was wrong. Yeah. I'm sorry.
They have nominated other people from it. I think John Roberts is the only one who's been nominated specifically for Bob's Burgers. Kristen Shaw was nominated last year, but for BoJack Horseman.
I love her.
I think she's great too. I think that I'm just not sure. I was really hoping that the character voiceover people would go for it. And you wanted to say something. Please go.
No, I said let's talk EGOT. So
yes,
I mean Tim Rice, Andrew Lloyd Webber, John Legend, all producers of Jesus Christ Superstar. So Chris is, as we speak, updating the gallery, getting ready.
Oh, does Andrew Lloyd Webber not have an EGOT?
He does not have an Emmy. They're all missing Emmys.
Okay, then we got to make sure that Jesus Christ Superstar does not win that, because I do not want Andrew Lloyd Webber to have an EGOT.
They've never been nominated for Emmys before.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's going to happen. We'll just leave it. But let's talk about one where there might actually be a chance to see something kind of funny. and I really want to hear Riley's take on this. We have Pasek and Paul, the it boys of basically musicals for the last couple of years, with A Christmas Story Live song title in the market for a miracle. But I don't think they're going to win this automatically, because I actually think Saturday Night Live and Chance the Rapper could win for Comeback Barack. So Riley, what do you think? Do you think that we're going to see, or maybe Steve Martin or Martin Short? Do you think we're going to see Pasek and Paul? Or do you think we're going to maybe see one of our crazier, funnier winners?
Well, I haven't listened to any of these songs, but I trust your judgment sometimes.
I just think, it's so timely. It's probably the most known.
And they haven't been afraid. And the Emmy voters, specifically in the music range, have not been afraid to reward things that are, to say politely, unconventional.
Blank in a box.
Dick in a box. I'm fucking Matt Damon.
I love that song.
It's great. And what's one of the other? It's Not Just for Gays Anymore from the Tony Awards, which is one of the greatest. Which is one of the greatest songs ever. I got into a slight hissy fit with Kevin Jacobson, one of our other writers, because he wrote something about someone else who was nominated that year, and I'm just like, no, you don't get to complain about that because the right one won.
No. And the thing is that if I love my writers branch and they are really out there, but the song people are the most way out there, and I'm so happy, and I'm really hoping that this will win.
Look, I will say that it does seem like we have a much different race than we had the last couple of years, when we had a documentary nominee and maybe one that seemed like it was Oscar bound, and then it was playing catch up at the Emmys. So,
well, we do have a documentary. It's If You're Not in the Orbit, Eat Breakfast. Song title just getting started, but that's an HBO documentary. I don't think that's going to get nominated.
So we might have returned to the more comedic, or whatever adjective you use to describe them.
And who doesn't want to see Obama back in office?
I would love to personally also. I would love to see Am I Gay from Big Mouth win, because I'm a huge Big Mouth fan, and that's another one I wish we could have seen get into animated program. But the idea of who is it that they have? It's someone, Freddie Mercury and Antonin Scalia, all singing about the glory of homosexuality. I mean, that just deserves a Pulitzer on its own.
I'm so mad that Tina Fey did not win this last year for that Titus opening number.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
That was amazing. I was also disappointed last year they didn't nominate Mystery Science Theater 3000 for the episode for the song "Every Country Has a Monster." It's a brilliant little song.
These below the lines are fun, and I always feel a little bad for Mandy Moore, because Mandy Moore, the choreographer, got nominated, and she gets emails saying congratulations on your Emmy nomination.
Oh, I've made that mistake on the Creative Arts broadcast, thinking that was that was Mandy Moore, and I was saying, oh, you know what, I loved her in Saved, she was great, so now I think she has an Emmy, and it's like, oh wait, that's a different Mandy Moore.
Well,
I'm sure she's
I saw
wishing.
her show last year saying, I got an email saying congratulations on your Emmy nomination, and she called her agent, and they're like, it's not you.
I'm sure she's wishing she was that Mandy Moore this year. So.
Yeah.
I feel so sorry.
The other Mandy's won a couple. She can lend her. She
She's
can
only
lend her
won one. She won last year. That was her first Emmy win. Yeah, it was off of after La La Land. She finally won her first Emmy, but she tied. So maybe this year she'll win her own.
Well, I mean,
right, so before we go, I just want to see any last minute thoughts from y'all before we close up shop. Amanda, Zach. Amanda first.
I like to look at these as a way in the categories where The Handmaid's Tale and the Game of Thrones compete head to head, more just to see do the tech branches favor one over the other, not to see who gets the biggest total necessarily. So that's something to look for. It's also something to look for on like the limited series side. I don't think Atlanta and Marvelous Maisel overlap enough where we could really read tea leaves enough in those.
And Zach?
We didn't talk about these categories at all, but the documentary field is really, really strong this year, especially in the special category. There's obviously there's the Oscar winner Icarus, but there's 3 terrific documentaries nominated. One is Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond. The other is
because of that, I saw we have a nomination for Tony Clifton at this year's Emmys. Tony Clifton's listed as a producer, and of course, anyone who was born after 1984 probably doesn't understand that. I do, but
I do. I was not born.
It's amazing.
Can I do a web chat where I just host as Tony Clifton?
That would be a rambling and incoherent web chat, but yeah, what's
well, some people would say our normal chats are rambling and incoherent, but
I wanted to also point out the Spielberg documentary, and also the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling, which is a really lovely to a man who really helped change television in a profound way. So I'm glad that those films got some recognition, and I have a hard time choosing which one I want to win, but I guess my heart would go out to the Gary Shandling one.
That's
a beauty. Yeah.
I love Wild Country. I think that'll be a great winner.
Yeah, well, that's in a different.
That's docu-series. Sorry.
It's a really strong field for documentaries. The Emmys always nominate great nonfiction programs
and they're always willing to go their own way. Like last year, we saw LA 92 win over, I think, the OJ miniseries.
Was it that or 13th? I can't.
No, I think that it was Planet Earth that won over OJ and 13th because
okay.
Well, we did have
somebody screaming at us.
Film Academy. The film, they blame the Film Academy for a lot of this about being able to compete on both the Emmys and the Oscars, but the Television Academy is also equally responsible. And good for Netflix for not nominating Mudbound because there's nothing in the rules that would have stopped it.
Let me just say this about the documentaries, though. This year has been really good for theatrical documentary releases with the Ruth Bader Ginsburg one and the Mr. Rogers one. But by and large, TV is where these movies get made and get shown. So, it's not their fault that they don't play in multiplexes very often. And I don't think they should be penalized for that at either award ceremony. I understand the discrepancy, but it has been happening for at least 30 years now.
I'm just saying the people who are complaining about it, it's not just the Oscars' fault. There's also rules in the Television Academy that are allowing this to happen. And until something like a major motion picture like Mudbound, that got a couple of Oscar nominations, decides, you know what, we didn't win an Oscar, but you know what sounds good to us? A couple of Emmys.
I agree with you there. That's a little.
It's not going to change.
Yeah,
it's just not.
And I also just want to give a shout out to the Defiant ones. Alan Hughes was one of the most fun people I've interviewed, and I'm very happy for him for getting in on this one. Riley, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of things. First of all, I'll say that Parts Unknown got a Series Best 7 nominations, and then I'll also talk about how normally I like to take nominations away. This time, I'm trying to give back. So in the Best Variety Series Directing category, it's another one that's supposed to be proportional, just like comedy directing. But I guess the people in that branch don't really care that they're missing out on a nomination right now. So we'll see if I can get one for them. What's happening is the category is supposed to be majority sketch series because most of these submissions in the category were sketch series. But everybody just likes to nominate, John Oliver and Stephen Colbert and whatnot. So we actually have 4 nominees that are talk shows and 2 nominees that are sketch, but it's supposed to be 3 sketch and 2 talk. So we'll see if I can rectify that at all, maybe get some additional nominees added.
You're just like the Fox and Antichrist here. You're just raining chaos on everyone.
If you can, while you're at it, get that Big Bang Theory directing nomination taken away, that would be really...
Well, Riley has an Emmy spotlight to write if Peter McNichol comes back for V.
And Tom, my friend, any final thoughts?
Oh, Charlie. Apart from my favorite race, the Blackish versus Gianni Versace costume race,
That's
uh,
awesome.
I'd like to end on a hopeful note. I hope that Colin Jost and Michael Che are good. I really do like them on Weekend Update. It took them a little while to get their chemistry. I think they've got it now, and hopefully that can translate into a very relevant hosting job, and fingers crossed.
I am 100% with you. I like them on Update, and I really hope that they do well on the ceremony. And you can keep track of everything regarding the Emmys by sticking with us, goldderby.com. We're going to have more of these Slugfests, talking about every facet of this that you can imagine. Keep checking our blog posts and keep making your predictions, because sometimes you know better than us. Not bloody likely. But anyhow, we hope that we wish you all the best. We are looking forward to a great Emmy season. So take care, y'all.